So there was a couple who had been married for 60 long years, and they never had any secrets. They usually just kind of were open to each other, and they loved each other, and they shared just about anything except for one thing, and that was a shoebox. When they got married, the wife said, "You know, honey, I'll share anything with you, but this shoebox I'm going to leave in our closet on the top shelf. Don't mess with it. Don't ask me what's in it. Just ignore it. I need this in order to be the best wife that I can be." And he's like, okay. And so he's inquisitive, but he's newlywed, so he's not going to try to upset his wife too quickly, too fast. And so years pass by, and 60 years later, his wife finds herself in the hospital. She's gravely ill, and the doctors don't expect her to recover. And so the doctors kind of encourage them to prepare. And so he goes home and starts preparing and gets the dress out that they had agreed, and he noticed the shoebox. And so he pulls out the shoebox and he brings it to the hospital, and he's like, I promised that I'll never ask, but since we're at this point, is it okay if I open this? And she said, yes. So we opened it, and there was 2 crochet dolls and $95,000 in cash. And the guy was like blown away. He's like, "You've had this in the house the whole time? All this time we've been, scraping by, sending the kids off to college, and the time where the water heater went out, and I had to go and ask money." He's like, "You've had this money the whole time?" She's like, yes. He's like, "Why? Why did you have this?" She's like, "Well, my great aunt at our wedding day said to do this. Every time we have an argument, and it's irreconcilable, we can't find common ground, she told me to shut my mouth and to crochet a doll and keep that doll." So the man's holding the 2 crochet dolls, and he's looking at her. He's like, "We've only had 2 disagreements our whole marriage this is unbelievable." And the wife's kind of like twiddling her thumbs, and he goes, "But why the $95,000? And she says, "Well, here's the thing. Every time I crocheted a doll, I sold it to the craft shop for $5. Yeah, you'll do anything to make peace in the home, right? Anything and everything to make peace in the home. And then some of you are thinking about, "Hey, that would be good. I like some $95,000. I don't think there's a craft shop who would buy a crochet doll that I would knit." But everybody has said, a happy home's a peaceful home. And we've got to try to keep the peace. You know that saying? Keep the peace? But I don't know about you. There's no keeping peace, because it seems like there's nothing but hostility, right? I mean, that's what we're prone to in this sinful, fallen world, is that it's so easy just to look around and see all the hostility. We'll argue over some of the dumbest things in the history of humanity. Like this one, hopefully. Oh, I turn it on. You guys remember this? Now, you don't have to be on Facebook to remember this at all, right? This is that dress last year. It was even on the news, okay? The people were arguing whether it was a gold and white dress or a black and blue dress. Raise your hand if you think it's a black and blue dress. Raise your hand if you think it's a gold and white dress. I don't understand you people. Let's have a discussion about this. No, seriously, people went nuts over this dress. I mean, there were comments after comments on websites about how, I can't believe people, they must be blind, and we'll argue over the dumbest things. And we try to say, hey, we got to make the peace. I think Jesus wants to take it further. You see, in Matthew chapter 5, starting verse 9, he talks about what we need to be doing. He says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." So blessed are the peacemakers. We're going to focus on that one first, and then we'll move into the persecuted. Blessed are the peacemakers. It's hard to keep peace. I mean, all of humanity, recorded history, 85% of our recorded history, we have been in wars. There have been 8,000 peace treaties made and broken in the history of recorded history of humanity. We have this propensity to be in division, to be in conflict. And we try to find peace in other areas. But Jesus is saying that not only don't just keep the peace, we make peace. We make peace. And so this word, peacemaker, it doesn't keep making a truce. This isn't just agreeing to disagree. It's going a step further. This means that in our differences, we still move toward one another. Are you seeing that in society today? That we look at our differences, our different values, our different goals, our different viewpoints, and we say, you know what? We disagree on this. Let's move past that. Let's get closer. Do you see that in society? I don't see that. I have a hard time even seeing that in the church at times. There's opposition in the world everywhere. We are the result of sin, and there's constant division. And what happens when someone has a different opinion or a different viewpoint or a different stance, we see the next train of thought, name calling starts to happen. Names like bigot or snowflake or libtard or Islamophobia. We'll call each other names just because of different viewpoints, and we're not making peace, we're creating more and more division. All that does is create division. A peacemaker doesn't compromise the truth. I'm not saying that. We don't compromise the truth to placate, but they don't seek division. And name-calling, us versus them mentality, this beatitude, you should look at it, there should be, it doesn't sit right with you. If Jesus is calling you a peacemaker, and in everything that you do, you see division, and it's time that maybe you start sowing some peace in your life. Listen up, because I fall into this so hard. When I look at Facebook and online media, it removes the face-to-face interaction, and so then we don't see the humanity in each other, both the good and the bad, and so we're more prone to just attack, and try to assassinate people with our own words. And that's not what we're called to do. I'm not saying we don't point out the wrongs in society, but when we do, what is the motive behind doing it? Is it so that we're right, or so that we're right and unifying at the same time? But I think most of the time, and I fall into this, okay, I'm guilty of it as much as anybody in this room, we would rather destroy someone with our ideological nuclear semantics than actually reach out to them and want them to know the truth. We'll get tied up in stupid debates like dresses, and we'll forget that God has called us to be peacemakers. It's okay to have a conversation, but let's be honest, we're past conversations a lot, right? We're dividing ourselves. We're using the us versus them mentality. If you consider yourself a child of God and you're causing division, seeking out the wrong in people, never applauding, never encouraging, then you're at conflict with this beatitude. If you are not a peacemaker, at least what you could do is try not to be a troublemaker, right? But Jesus didn't say, blessed are the, neutral people. Blessed are those who are just trying to keep, blessed are those who are making peace. Those who are following me make peace. And you see, this word peace, it means to join together that which has been divided. This is a beautiful illustration because humanity is divided as a result of sin. They're divided and they're separated from God, and the symptoms really prohibited us from having unity with God. Sin has caused division, not just us with God, but with each other in the world. That's why this exists. Believers are not to create a larger wedge in the world by what they say and how they interact. We are to bring the world together through the power of Christ, because that's what Christ has done in us, brought us to the Father. His redemptive work happens here and now because of His Spirit is in us. But if we are determined to define our values on political ideologies and senseless arguments, we are not bringing peace from heaven to earth. We are further perpetuating the sway and the symptoms of sin. And Jesus is saying, blessed are you who are peacemakers, for you will be children of God. We don't join in the world by dehumanizing the opposition. Jesus didn't dehumanize us when we were in opposition to Him with our sin. No, He became human to deal with that opposition. And so the bottom line is, making peace creates a bridge in a broken world. And that's what we're called to do. To bring together and make peace with one another and with God. And so we have this message. And when we get in these arguments, we have to ask, what is the end game here? What is the end game? I think Satan sometimes laughs at us. I think just because someone has called you a name doesn't mean everyone who shares that view with you is calling you that name. But yet we get so defensive and worked up that we begin to attack one another. We begin to call out. And it creates division. And Satan's just licking his chops. Trying to bring others to peace apart from Christ is really futile. It's really futile. I don't think this is working now. I was going
to say, I thought you jumped over, so try it again.
It's not working. There you go. So I think many times what we tend to do is we try to make peace, or we try to placate. But Jesus is saying that we are the ones who are bringing from heaven peace to earth. And we do that by how we interact with one another. And trying to bring others to peace apart from Christ, it really is pointless. And we banter and we debate and we collectively put into stock our ideology and our views, and we look at it as if it's the world, but really, in all honesty, it's just a small portion of what we as humans has thought in a period of time which is small in comparison to the rest of the world and history. And so when I was studying this, and I'm like, Nathan, are you making peace when you talk to people online that way? You Facebook debater, you espouse your passions and you put out your judgments. I felt so dwarfed by God this past week. I mean, dwarfed. Because to think, He has all the truth. He knows all the truth. He is the immense, immortal, powerful God. I mean, if anyone could slay people with His words, it would be God, right? And yet, He chose peace. He made peace with us. He binds together the broken. He mends the tattered remains of our hearts. He calms the storms in our soul. The worries and anxieties are remedied by His presence, the presence of peace. And that's just interactions that we have on Facebook. What about your home? How do you handle conflict with your spouse or with your parents or your roommate or whatever? Are you the one who won't speak because you're afraid of conflict? You have this fear of conflict? And so in all actuality, you've created a relational barrier with you and between you and your spouse. Or are you the one who gets worked up over small things and you cause conflict for no reason? Like you're so defensive that you just like lash out, and I mean, that's me right there. That's me. Make little things big, causing conflict out of things that really aren't there. Are Are you the one who needs resolution from a conflict? And so you're chasing down the other person who's running away. Maybe they're so fearful of conflict they don't want to ruffle any feathers, and so they run away. Or the actuality is they know that they're not the person they need to be in the middle of a conflict when they're heated, and so they want to get away from you because they might punch you in the face, okay? And so you got to have that resolution. And so we all handle conflict differently, all right? You may be looking at the person next to you and thinking, well, he runs from conflict, or they make big deals out of the smallest things. But the reality is, a conflict is this. It's a difference of views that disrupts the goals and values of the people involved. That's what conflict is. It disrupts the views, it's a difference in how one may do or see or value one thing as opposed to the other. And so maybe you're like, I have no idea why people are protesting. Well, and I'm not saying this because I adhere to one side or the other. The reason why people are protesting is because they perceive the president as a threat to their goals and values. That's why there's conflict. And you may think that that's stupid, but is that going to bring peace by thinking it's stupid? No, that's not making peace. That's being judgmental. Okay? The reason why your wife is giving you the silent treatment is because you're valuing your hobby more than what she values. A marriage, okay? And so that's why there's conflict there. The reason why your teen is mad at you is because it is their goal to finally cut that umbilical cord and you just want them to be your baby, right? But on the other side of that, the reason why your parents are mad is because just because you can drive 80 miles an hour down 231 doesn't mean you should, right? Yeah, Coons, Landon, you just got your permit. Look out, buddy. The reason why I was upset with the waitress a couple weeks ago is because I value eating, obviously. And she forgot to put my order in the computer. All right? And so there was this conflict there. She tried to resolve this conflict by lying and saying it was the kitchen's fault, but I've been to this rodeo before, okay? I've served tables. I know that excuse that other servers have used. I didn't use that when I was a server because I was trying to be truthful and I just be humble and say, I messed up. But she wanted that tip. I knew the truth. But she could have resolved the conflict a little bit better and just gave me a dessert, right? I mean, that would have been a lot better. That's a good peacemaking tip. If you're in peacemaking with somebody, or you're in conflict with someone, be a peacemaker. Make them a pie, okay? Especially sugar cream pie, those are great. But don't create conflict to get a pie, okay? That's not right. That's wrong. What you want and what you expect is thrown off by what others believe. The conflict and division exists. And you see that the majority of conflicts happen because we're not communicating. We're not asking the right questions. We automatically see them as opposition instead of people we can work together and bring peace to others here on earth. And so there's usually a lack of communication, and we're missing important details to the story. And as humans, what we do is instead of ask questions, instead of getting the right story, what we do is we fill in our own version of the story. We assume and we expect the worst out of people because of our past experiences of things that we've been involved in. Well, they did it this time, so obviously that's what it means this time. Most of the time, our conflict resolves from our selfishness. James talks about this in James chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Do they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire, but you do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you have on your own pleasures. You see, the cause to conflicts are usually found on desires and values and goals that are violated. And when our ideal life of a good life fails, usually conflict happens between the people in our life, or sometimes people who don't have nothing to do with your life, like that waitress. Or maybe you'll go to God and you'll ask, and your prayers never get answered the way you expect them to? Because ultimately, what you want is not what you need. If you are willing to forsake family, friends, and peace with God, then your desire is for yourself. And Jesus saves us from ourselves. He isn't just going to hand ourselves back over to ourselves. He wants to spare us from ourselves, from the worst part of ourselves. He's trying to save us each and every day from the worst of who we are. He's still trying to bring peace into your life. You may have accepted his peace decades ago, but he wants to bring peace in areas in which you have cut off. And so this peace is more than what we can formulate in a catchy phrase. But in Philippians 4:7, this is what Paul says, "And the peace of God, which transcends all Facebook posts, all memes, all videos on the internet, all conversations up at the diner, all the peace of God which transcends all that you know will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." And God, he brings peace, and he makes peace here on earth through you. And if you're like me, you're like, wait, I'm supposed to be a peacemaker? I've got this huge, massive conflict in my life. How am I supposed to bring peace to others if I have conflict in my life? Well, like we shared last week, it's an overflow. As he gives you mercy, you overflow mercy on others. As he gives you peace, it overflows on others. God brings peace through us. Abraham Lincoln said it this way, "Die when I may, I would like to be said of me that I always pulled up a weed and planted a flower where I thought a flower would grow." So that's what peace is all about. It's seeing the weeds in life, the bad conversations, and not adding to it, not tangling your roots into that flower bed, but you're pulling up whatever things you were going to say and instead bring a peaceful message. You see, the classic verse that we look at this for peace is found in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 19 through 20. This word peace was used for ambassadors to bring a peace treaty. And this is what Paul says to the people of Corinth. God was reconciling the world to himself. There was division, there was conflict. He brought the world to him. Not counting people's sins against them, not counting the differences in that conflict against them. He committed to us the message of reconciliation. We are therefore God's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. We implore you, on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. Be reconciled to God, but don't just be reconciled to God. Be peacemakers for God. That if you've received this peace, if you have been brought to God, if those differences have been erased by the power of Christ, you don't just sit there, you bring that message to others. You are a peacemaker to others. You're making peace in people's life. And it's crucial that we do this as a church. There's so much discord. There's so much division in this world. We can't join in their conversations. We have to bring the message of peace. That should be the primary motive. Not just being right about our thoughts of things in society, but by bringing the peace of Christ into society through the message of Christ. You don't need this pulpit to do it. Your pulpit is your life. And we are to bring peace by bringing people to Jesus. And we shouldn't try to assassinate people with our words and our insults and our cunning arguments, because his peace transcends all of that. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 14, the writer says this, "Make every effort to live in peace with those who agree with you." This is the hard part. With everyone. Make every effort, pursue incessantly, pursue peace with everyone, and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. And so we pursue Christ, and we pursue all that he is. That means we're pursuing others, and we're trying to bring peace into this world. You see, make peace with those even if they're bent on destruction. And that's where the latter half of this, the last beatitude really strikes me as hard. Everyone is to be given peace. Because we were given peace. When we oppose God and sin, we are to bring peace to others. Even if they hate us. Not just those who love Jesus, or those who think like us, those who root for Southmont, or for Purdue, or for Indiana, or who's a Republican, or who's a Democrat. No, we bring peace to everyone. Everyone. Blessed are you who, when people insult you, persecute you, falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. We are, as Jesus calls us to pray for those who persecute us. Why? Because he died for those who crucified him. And what did Peter do when they took Jesus out of the Garden of Gethsemane? He whipped out his sword and he went slicing. Jesus didn't divide. Jesus brings peace in men's brokenness. And so that's why Jesus took that guard's ear that Peter lopped off, and he made peace, and he healed him. We are to do that. Those who live by the sword die by the sword. Those who annihilate other people's character instead of trying to bring others to Christ or to share the message of Christ, that you're going to get that right back. We're not called to be involved in the vitriol of society. We are called to bring peace to society so that the symptoms of sin dissipate. Even if people are attacking us, and I know you've been called names. I know people close to you have said some of the worst things to you. And you, if you haven't already, some of you kids in here, you're going to grow up in an America that is more opposed to the gospel than it has ever been. And Jesus is saying you should rejoice and be glad. And you're thinking, really? I really don't like conflict. I don't like people in my face. Jesus, we're really supposed to rejoice when people hate us, despise us? Sometimes I really don't get it. Jesus, are you really saying that I need to be glad when I see kids in Iraq whose heads are cut off? Seriously, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around it. Rejoice, believers, when you are beat because you're in a Muslim country or you're in a society that doesn't look kindly on the gospel. Where do we find peace when persecution prevails? Jesus doesn't paint this following him with all benefits, with no risks. It's not about the rewards, it's about reality. He's not set on making life easy for the 12 disciples, because all but one died for him. Some of them were filleted alive. He wasn't interested in making life easy. Life wasn't supposed to be easy. It was supposed to be good according to him, and that's when he makes them great, by having them even rejoice when things are tough. And then when suffering comes, that he will bring comfort. And this is counterintuitive to us in the 10th degree. If you think back, maybe it was 2 years ago or last year, you remember that clerk in Kentucky who would not issue same-sex marriage certificates? And there was multiple responses from different sides, and that was just another issue that people were debating over. And so what should she have done? Should she have broken the law like she did? Was there no option? Was she forced to do that in the same way that the disciples were forced to hang on a cross upside down? No. She did have an option. She could have quit. Held a press conference and say, because I believe in Christ, I cannot do this. That would have been a pretty peaceful way of doing it, right? She would have lost out on some comfort that some non-believers have. Would the country still have issued those marriage certificates? You better believe it. Tertullian is a church father, and a man came to him from the Silvers Guild, and he believed in Christ, but he couldn't make any money because in order to be a silversmith, he would have to go to the temple and worship their God. And so he couldn't do that. And so he was starting to wrestle. And he's like, I don't know what to do. I mean, I'm not going to have any money. And what can I do? I must live. And then Tertullian says this, must you? Really? Must you? Must you live? If it came with a choice of being loyalty or your life, you do what Jesus did. You are loyal and you give up your life. That's the message of the cross. And that is one of the hardest things that we wrestle with in America. Because we don't understand the persecution that happens to the degree that people in the world today face and people in the Bible face. And so how are we treated does not change how we live for Jesus. If being a believer does not cause tensions in your life, then maybe you're not open up to your faith to others as much. You see, being a follower of Christ causes division. Now this is where it kind of gets all fuzzy. Matthew chapter 10, verse 34 through 35. You're going to see the contradiction here. Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth, says Jesus. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against his mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Well, Nathan, why are you sharing that? That has nothing to do with peace. You're talking about blessed are the peace, and Jesus saying, I have not come to bring peace. I mean, aren't you contradicting yourself, Nathan? What are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to bring a sword? Are we supposed to bring peace? I mean, it seems to be mixing words. Jesus came here to bring peace. And Satan does not like that. Satan's goal is not to bring peace, it's to steal, kill, and destroy. And whenever you bring a message of peace into the world, do not expect it to be embraced with hugs and kisses. You might expect divisions, even in your own family. I've seen it even here in America. Kids wanting to go off to Bible college, and parents are like, well, I'm not paying for it because that's not a real job. I've seen it. I've seen it overseas where a woman became a Christian and her Hindu family poisoned her and killed her. It's out there. And just because we bring a message of peace doesn't mean the world's going to be, oh, kumbaya, yay. If they're controlled by sin, if they're swayed by sin, if they are influenced by Satan himself, they're going to try to end that peaceful message by breaking you down. It is from our hearts that we honor Jesus when we follow him. It shouldn't just be because that's what we've always done. It shouldn't be some lifeless routine. Our faith will flounder when the heat of opposition warms up. And folks, it's going to warm up. And think, well, not after November. It's not. Well, not after November. We don't put your trust in people alone. Put your trust in Jesus. You see, it's from our hearts that we honor Jesus. Even in the most difficult times, we're faithful to him. I probably shared this before, but there was this minister in India who had planted churches, and he was driving home with his newly wedded wife on the back of his moped, and they were driving in a secluded area with trees and whatnot. There was a small path, and next thing you know, a chain had been pulled, and the moped flipped over, and 8 men came out, tied him to the tree, and assaulted his wife. It's hard to bring peace when something like that happens. I'll be honest, I wouldn't know what I'd do in that situation. Blessed are the peacemakers, for the children of God. And he was going to be an ambassador of Christ to reconcile the loss of India, no matter what has happened in his life. So next Sunday, he was in the pulpit preaching. A couple Sundays had passed. 3 of the men who had assaulted his wife came forward to be baptized. Making peace is not easy. And you could think that you are more deserving than others, but We're called to make peace. No matter what. Even if it's difficult. Your life is not just your life. Your life is a display to show the peace of Christ. Because making peace creates bridges in a broken world. And so when you leave here this morning, and you look out, and you know who lives in this house, there is brokenness, there is division, and little old Ladoga. And if we are to be peacemakers, what are we going to do? Maybe something we've never done before to bring peace into this community that so desperately needs it. What changes are we going to make in our lives and in the way we function as a group of believers to reach those who are broken and need healing, who have no mending in their life, who are struggling? What are we going to do together to be peacemakers? Because that is what children of God do. Would you